Thank you, Professor Pilgard and colleagues. I think this is a very important session for our society because we every day use city index, and we have to know very in detail about the index we are using. And as a scientific committee at the Chesterfield International Group, I think we must use scientifically correct and logical index to evaluate our patients. So today we're gonna discuss very deeply and widely about all indices available in the literature and in our practice. And then we have to gather our opinions and wisdom to establish a very logical scientific index for our patients. So my index is, I would like to introduce. So we have the number of indexes in the literature, and we've been using differently from surgeon to surgeon, and which index should be universally can be used. I guess the first requirement for the index must be logical and must be universal. So it cannot be personal or follow the tradition or something. So my new, it was not new. It's been already more than 10 years. Actually, it was developed in 2002, and it's reported in the Chester meeting in 2004. Unfortunately, I didn't publish this in the former paper, but these indexes are listed in my publications later on many times. First of all, we need to know how deep is the depression. When I made these indexes, we are seriously concerned about the pectus excavatum. So the most indexes is covering the pectus excavatum deformity, but probably we can use, those can be used in the carinatum or other deformities. So we need to know how deep the depression was. So I developed the depression index. For your reference, that my depression index is not the one just Anna mentioned previously. So that depression index came much later, but I have no idea about that. And then we see a lot of asymmetric patients, so we need to know how asymmetric the patient is. So we need to know the asymmetric degree. And many times we have eccentrically located, deviated depressions, so many times. In my experience, it comprises almost 45%. And many times we see ugly, distorted, unbalanced chest wall. So to communicate between among in our society, we have something communicating tool, and if we want to report our patients under surgical results or something, we need to tool for communicate. There must be used something numerical to evaluate exactly. So, as you know, this is the Heller index. Because I didn't agree with the why we have to incorporate the transverse diameter to measure the how deep is the depression is. So this is a very compounding. I guess this is the most compounding factor to evaluate our system here. So I replaced the transverse diameter to the vertical one. So this represents exactly how much depression is present here. And the asymmetry is how asymmetry we would like to know. And this is for how eccentric the depression is located. And it's a quite complex idea, but anyway, we have a different slope from the center of the depression. So this is another kind of asymmetry. So I named this unbalanced index. So we know number of indexes in there. We have to judge that index is correct or not. I would like to compare Heller index and my depression index. Actually, my conclusion, the Heller index is many times incorrect because the over age differences, we have a different transverse diameter, so it's not demonstrated purely the degree of depression. It incorporates the lateral distance, so many times it's not correct. On the other hand, depression index directly represents how much depressed the chest wall is. So as you see here, we have a same Heller index of 6. It's a pretty big number, but as you see, I don't think it's that much deep here. My depression index is 2.3 and 1.3, a little bit shallow depression, but Heller is 6. Reversely, we can compare with the same depression index here. Heller is 7.4, this part is 3.8 because very wide chest for this CT scan here. And then furthermore, we have a preoperative CT scan here with the Heller index 9.3 and the depression 2.9. And the post-op, I think this repair is pretty good, and I think I can do any more about this. But surprisingly, Heller index is still 3.6. Still, it's the criteria of the surgical indication. Whereas the depression index is 1. The depression index of 1 means there is no depression. Similarly, many cases in my practice, post-op Heller index was pretty high. So what can we do for these patients? Do I have to follow the Heller index guideline? Again, in control patients, those are not the patients, but the Heller index 3.5, 3.4. But depression is just 1 on both cases. So I think the Heller index is not very correct, not very logical. And next, correction index. Correction index measures the one side of the chest wall height here and the depressed part. In symmetric cases, this is okay, almost similar idea with my depression index. But we see many cases of asymmetry. How can we do that? In this case, do we have to measure here or there? Why measure here? Why measure here? Why not measure here? And a more extreme case, we have very high chest wall like this way. What can we do for these cases? So we can calculate the ratio between here or here. This is just ambiguous. So in those evidence, with those evidence, I don't think the correction index is very correct or universal. Anyway, it must not be very universal. So depression index represents directly depression, but we need to draw some line here, but there must be some errors. But when we consider the general configuration of the chest wall, anyway, we don't know what is the normal chest wall in those kind of configurations. So we just estimate or assume, imagine the real configuration, because we don't know what's the real. By this way, we can measure many different types of asymmetry. So I guess my depression index is pretty close to our request. And furthermore, we have a very easy comparison between the index numbers here. This is the DI 1.5 and the DY 1, 1.5 to exactly the same ratio with the numbers. So once we know the number, we can imagine how deep the depression is immediately. So this is a normal chest. This is a moderate depression. This is a severe depression. And this is listed in the Marcello's textbook, and I got the 4-star here. And in conclusion, my depression asymmetric eccentric imbalance index was renamed the ADIO index to say goodbye Heller or correction index. And my indexes are approaching 1 after the surgery if we have a very decent no residual repair. This is maybe a very good communication tool, accurate communication tool. We can plan and the assessment to the repair, and we can add a volume because this is a 4-way estimation, so just not a single way. Therefore, we can gauge depth and the distortion all together with the ADIO index. Maybe later it can portray 3D image in our minds. Thank you.